Hello and welcome to my vlog where I'm going to be talking about coaching philosophy. So what I'm going to do is give you a breakdown of my coaching philosophy and what has influenced it, but also look at how my coaching philosophy applies to me as a coach and what I do as a coach. So just like all good philosophical discussions, we need to define what we're talking about. So what is a coaching philosophy? Burton and Raddick defined it as a set of beliefs and principles that guide your behavior, whereas Lai defined it as a comprehensive statement about the beliefs and behavior that will characterize the coach's practice. However, the literal translation of the word philosophy from Greek means the love of wisdom. This can further be defined by accumulated knowledge. And when looking at the role of the coach, I would like to define this as facilitating the athlete in achieving excellence. This comment may seem a little elitist, however, as a coach, I believe that everyone should be striving towards becoming the best version of themselves in achieving individual excellence. Therefore, to me, a coaching philosophy is a coach's thoughts, beliefs, and values formed by knowledge to facilitate the athlete in achieving excellence. And so my knowledge will form the base or guide of my coaching philosophy and practice. And I believe this is influenced by my experiences, my logic, and science. I will now look to explain how this has affected my thought process and coaching philosophy. So firstly, when looking at logic, a great example of me using my logic was how I came to the conclusion on my definition of a coaching philosophy. So a simple example of how I might use deductive reasoning to come to a conclusion could be if I have an athlete that activates her muscles during a deadlift and also have an athlete that activates his muscles while running, then I can conclude that my athletes will activate their muscles when exercising. So now an example of how I could use inductive reasoning could be if I had an athlete that got stronger after training, I could conclude that training will make you stronger. This is probably true, however, is not certain as there's probably a chance that training can make you weaker. And lastly, being skeptical by questioning things and beliefs. I believe that this is a start of the good practice of thinking critically. So although all these are simple examples, I would say I would use all three aspects to aid my logical process. Okay, so how does my experience affect my knowledge and my coaching philosophy? Okay, so if something has worked for you in the past, then you're probably more likely to use it in the future. I find it very hard to believe that any coach isn't going to use their experience to influence their coaching philosophy. Essentially, it's how we learn, how the difference between us is how we perceive that experience. This very much starts to follow the empiricism approach, which implies that knowledge comes from experience. However, just because you haven't experienced something doesn't mean that it's not true. And like I've said, people will perceive the same situation differently and therefore may come to a different conclusion. It is also likely that coaching philosophy will change over a period of time due to individual experiences. So a good example of how my coaching philosophy has changed as a result of my experience would be how my thoughts and feelings have changed about CrossFit and how I was indoctrinated in thinking CrossFit's methodology was the best conditioning program for every sport, including endurance running. And now having a greater experience to the process of strength conditioning, my thoughts on CrossFit have changed and believe it is probably not the best program for specific goals or achieving certain results more quickly, for example, training for a long endurance trail run. And lastly, how does science affect my knowledge and coaching philosophy? So my thoughts on science is that I think it's a fantastic tool to help explain a phenomenon, a theory, and guide a practice through developing knowledge. However, sometimes I believe that the science can be behind the athletes and that the athletes are continuously proving the scientists wrong. For example, Roger Bannister running the first sub 4 minute mile, and more recently Eliot Jacobit running the first sub 2 hour marathon. I may also have a training method that may not be in line with the science or the research but still gets results. This may be again because people are interpreting the results differently, or because the results have been portrayed in a certain way to fit a narrative through bad science. And this is why I quite like Karl Popper's falsification theory, where nothing is really proven and science is just theories until disproven. But also building off this, Thomas Kuhn's idea of paradigm shifts, as I'd like to see my coaching philosophy in my own paradigm, which will shift when presented with a logical alternative. Okay, so in summary, my coaching philosophy is formed from my knowledge, which is based off my logic, my experience, and science, which work in conjunction with each other. However, it is still easily malleable and will change when presented with a logical alternative. And this is how I believe that I can incite excellence into my athletes.